I think it's just got to come up with some brightness here.
Jim will break the light color.
The rest of it gets brighter in this stormy, dreary night.
With a street light.
That's beautiful.
That's anywhere.
Right. Just a short history of how we got here, and I've been working on this for 18 or 19 months now. Back in the 1950s, street lighting became a popular thing with NYSEG for one reason. They had extra energy in the grid that they created during the daytime, and that extra energy was produced and sitting in the grid at nighttime, and they tried to figure out how can we make some money off this energy that during the day we have to produce, and they came up with street lights. So they began renting street lights to municipalities to use some of that energy and of course make money off something they were already producing that they had in the grid. For over 60 years we've continued on that course, renting the equipment and buying the energy from them. A couple facts about our current street lighting. Cost to the town of Plattsburgh to rent the equipment was in the neighborhood of $93,000 in 2012.
And what's really important there, Paul, and we've said I think every time, that cost in 2012 was a reoccurring cost for equipment that was put in the 50s.
Right.
Yeah. A number of our
Not
lights were
new
installed in the
equipment.
50s, 60s, 70s. If you look at the history of when they were installed, very few lights have been installed in the 2000 years, unless they were new. If it was a new development, obviously some new lights went in. $13,215 in street lighting costs actually right now currently are paid for out of the general fund. These are for lighting districts that aren't in a special district. Throughout the town they've decided this was a dark intersection and the town board approved putting a street light there. The cost for all of those comes out of the general fund. Coincidentally, it's 105 street lights that get paid for out of the general fund. Out of 1,200, and the number's a little up in the air between us and NYSEG. It's 1,250 something, maybe as high as 1,270 something. So about 8% of the street lights in the town have been paid for out of the general fund, and they've been paid that way for years.
That $13,215, is that the cost for renting the equipment or renting and
That's rental and electricity.
Okay.
Yep. So basically residents who are in a street lighting district paid not only their street lighting tax, but any money that's been contributed to the general fund through sales tax, whatever, they've also helped pay the $13,000. So some people have been paying actually twice for the same service. The average tax rate, and this kind of blew my mind when I actually did it. In 2002, it was 48, almost 49 cents per thousand. Today, it's 23.96 cents per thousand. And the rate kept dropping because after NYSEG traditionally charged them out to actually install street lighting, and then you went on a rental basis to maintain it. So as the equipment wound up getting paid for, they started diminishing it. Plus, we built up a capital reserve, and as the capital reserve got bigger, the tax rate went down because the capital reserve was large enough in whoever's opinion was operating the budget. Reasons that I decided we probably should change direction. New York State Electric and Gas about 20 years ago stopped having a street lighting maintenance crew, which they actually guaranteed towns for a number of years that they would maintain all these street lights. Part of the deal when they sold the package in the 50s, they'd have a street lighting crew that would go around and maintain the lights. They'd routinely change the lamps and photocells or anything else that was needed. They stopped doing it. They stopped doing it a while ago to the point where, NYSEG doesn't employ an awful lot of people per shift at all anymore. So they don't do much preventive maintenance. They'll respond if a light's out, they'll fix that light. The problem being the shelf life of a high pressure sodium lamp is about 8 years. So if they replace this lamp today, the lamp next to it 2 months from now goes out, so it looks like they didn't really fix this one, when in reality they fixed that one. It's just now the next one down the street isn't working because they do no preventive maintenance. We're at the bottom of the food chain. If they've got 100 customers out of power, 4 new people to do a new service connection to, and 2 Town of Plattsburgh streetlights out, I can tell you where we fall on their food chain and their priority list, and it's at the bottom, and it remains at the bottom. Every time something else comes in, it gets shuffled above that, and they'll eventually get to it. but it's not very high up on their priorities.
And it's important that the public knows too, correct me if I'm wrong, that if those lights are out and haven't been fixed because we're at the bottom of the food chain, we still pay a set price per month for electricity, whether we're using it or not.
Correct. NYSEG takes our electric bill and they automatically give us a percentage reduction based on, they know there's a certain percentage of street lights out. So they reduce our bill by a little bit every month, saying, yeah, we know a few of them aren't gonna work. So we can't say, well, we're charging you 100% for the cost of the kilowatt hours, because that's really what the bill is based on. It's the wattage of the lamp times the number of hours they're on, and it works on a fluctuating scale based on how many, I mean, we obviously pay more in the wintertime because there's more dark hours, pay less in the summertime. But that's based on all of them working, so they automatically give us a reduction in that fee. And I want to say, it wasn't a lot of money, but it is a reduction knowing that there's going to be some of them not lit. The town currently owns part of the street lighting inventory, so it's really a mixed bag of, is it our light, is it their light, is it something we install but they maintain, is it something we install and we maintain, did they install it and they maintain it? And it's really, depending on what development you're in, really determines whether we own it, whether they own it. So really, it becomes, Art Bro is probably one of the few people who know that's our street light, that's theirs. I mean, they aren't tagged, there's no tagging on the pole that says that currently, so, which in this process there will be. Our staff is already trained. We actually do an awful lot of the maintenance on lights. We do maintenance on lights that aren't even ours, just to get to them and get them done. We sometimes perform the maintenance. Actually, we perform maintenance on lights that NYSEG is contracted and paid to do the maintenance on. We do it anyway. Obviously, we would have faster response and repair time. What isn't a priority to NYSEG, it might be Smithfield Boulevard and Route 3. It's a priority to us. We can send guys out tomorrow morning and they're going to fix the light. If the highway department comes in on a snowy night and says, hey, 2 lights are out there and it's really dark on that intersection, those guys can go out tomorrow morning and they can fix it and take care of the problem, hopefully, as long as it's not direct burial underground. And as they would say on the late night shows, the #1 reason is it's definitely going to be cheaper. Okay. Cost to own our own streetlights. And this has taken a little while to put together. The negotiated price, it's going to cost us $100,000 plus interest on a ban for a 4-year period to buy their equipment. There's going to be an $18,200 charge, a one-time cost to buy the disconnects that NYSEG is going to require. That becomes a safety factor for our guys to be able to work on the streetlights. It's simply nothing more than a lead cord fused that they unplug, do all our work on the light, plug it back in. If there's some kind of a short or a problem, it would blow the fuse, and then they'd have to fix the problem, change the fuse, plug it back in again. The one side, NYSEG's side, would always be protected, and once we plug in, the fuse side would be on ours. So as soon as you disconnect, our guys can work on it safely. Wouldn't have to worry about working it hot, which right now currently we do quite a bit. $50,000 would be used to buy a 45-foot bucket truck, which is about 20 feet taller than the one we currently own. We've been looking at a couple of them. They're in the $40,000, $42,000 range to get one that, in Art's opinion, would last 10 years, maybe even more, because really it gets very limited use. It's short mileage distance, so the number of miles on a used vehicle isn't a concern, and we can buy one. I mean, these trucks are $250,000 new, so getting one for 40 grand, 50 grand used is a pretty good buy.
What if we put the lights lower on the pole? We wouldn't have to do that.
They wouldn't stretch, you'd have to put more of them up, because they wouldn't spread as far. And you'd buy a lot more lights. There's a pole connection fee, $10,600. That's an annual fee. And when I took this fee in projections for future years, I've increased this fee by 5%, which in this and the cost of electricity, I increased them both by 5%, which I can tell you because I talked to them. The Public Service Commission is never ever going to allow a 5% rate increase in 1 year, but I projected that to make sure that the number would work at the end of this thing. The electricity, $23,105. That's what we currently pay, or what we would actually pay in the 2013 year based on the negotiated contract that we got with NYSEG.
That's in addition to the rental.
That's what if we didn't buy the lights, we pay that $23,000 plus the $93,000 $100,000 to rent the equipment, correct.
So you're saying that's basically what our cost would be to run it?
Per year, you'd have those two costs, the connection fee and the electricity, and there's a couple more here. There's maintenance of equipment, and I put $25,000, but I can tell you, you'll see a slide later, that to change out a certain number of lamps every year, it's about $2,000. If we spent $10,000 a year on maintenance, I tell you, that's an awful lot of money. I made sure again that this is budgeted very high to make sure that we meet the projection 10 years from now. If we spent $10,000 in any one of 10 years, I'd be very surprised. The only time we'd hit that number is if you have a brand new subdivision and you had to go install 10 or 12 new lights. Then we would maybe come closer to that. But that would only be for a new subdivision. Routine maintenance on a yearly basis.
They're paying for the lights in a new subdivision.
Correct, and that's what they should be doing.
That's right.
And,
Just
but,
like paving.
but routine maintenance of what we currently have in stock won't come close to that number. There's gonna be $5,183.20 at least, well, that's a negotiated price we have to work on, to buy insurance, which these lights, even the ones we currently own right now, are not insured. If the ice storm came through and took them all down, the town of Plattsburgh would be paying out of the general fund to put them back up again. It's a negotiated price. I went through, Peter Prescott spent a couple of days going through the stock. This would also insure all of our traffic lights that aren't currently in our inventory and aren't currently insured. So if a tractor trailer comes down through, there would be a $5,000 deductible. But again, we're really talking to protect ourselves against the 98 ice storm and catastrophic loss, so that if 150 or 200 of these lights fall to the ground, we would be insured by any damage they cause, and we'd be insured to go put them back up, and obviously our guys couldn't put up 200 of them, so we'd also be insured to pay to hire 3 electrical contracting companies to come in and reinstall them, and their labor and everything would be included in that insurance bill.
At
So
prevailing wage.
you're exactly right.
Traffic signals are not insured.
Currently, they're not insured, no.
Those are $100,000, aren't they?
Yes, and they're currently not insured.
And they would be insured.
They would be in that price. A return to the general fund, and I picked a number, $30,000, that's annual salary, benefits, health care, gas in the truck, wear and tear on a truck. I mean, there's gotta be a bunch of costs. They would get returned to the general fund because all those costs are paid for from building maintenance out of the general fund. The street lighting district would reimburse the general fund for that. And I picked a number, again, I think it's probably a little bit high, but you really gotta calculate all that stuff in. And if we're not figuring in the gas and wear and tear on a truck and you know, basically renting ourselves a truck, or 2 trucks, and paying the salaries and health care, we're really missing the boat there. And it's a way to put money, it's a way to recoup money back in the general fund that really should be paid for by this
Does
district.
that include the 5,000 per year for the 10 years to buy a new truck?
This number?
Yeah,
No.
okay.
But I'll show you where we don't have to worry about that. The 10-year cost projection to own streetlights. In year 1, $270,000. That's because we have to buy the lights, we have to buy the disconnects. There's some one-time charges, the bucket truck, those things that run that number up there. Again, that's including the insurance, that's including the yearly disconnect, that's including $30,000 to the general fund. It's including all of those estimates, which that number is skewed high, and skewed high for a reason, because I know we won't ever reach those cost projections. After 4 years, you'll see it drops way down. That's because after 4 years, we pay for the equipment. And then again, I've included, and you see it going up slightly to it's $115,000 in year 2022. I included 5% increase in electricity, 5% increase in the charge to our pole disconnect, our pole connection fee, any of those associated costs, 5% increase in the insurance, which might be the only one that really gets to 5%, and I don't even know if that will. So that's why it continually creeps up a little bit in the cost. But in the first one, you can see, I mean, it's $70,000, $50,000 of that is the bucket truck, $20,000 of that are the electrical disconnects that we have to buy one time. That's the difference in them. And you'll see the number comes down slightly because because we're going to have less principal on the band, so the interest rate is going to be less per year. Cost to add a street light, and this was I tried to break it out, so if somebody wants one street light or one falls to the ground or whatever, what does it actually cost? $300 for the actual fixture head, $6 for the photo eye, $12 for the lamp, $15 for the electrical disconnect, $25 for miscellaneous hardware, nuts, bolts, and what have you to attach through bolt to the pole. An aluminum arm, and this is an average because they range anywhere from 12 feet to 24 feet. An average, and you'll see $150 is for, I think it's for a 10-foot arm, $512 for a 22-foot arm. The average of $314 for the arm. Labor to a town employee, $270. Total cost to put a street light in, $942. So when I was telling you about the cash surplus, and we would have to have some money in there if we need to put 10 street lights up in a place where residents came to us and said, we want our road lit, we're in the district, that's what it would cost per fixture to put them up. Pretty close. Cash surplus. I was kind of shocked at this, and this was really why the tax rate went down. In 2012, we currently have a $352,758 cash surplus. That, I have to tell you, is skewed a little bit because it's based on this year's budget number, and this year's budget was based on putting more money in the cash reserve. We certainly didn't just pay the bill. We paid the bill and wound up with a little bit extra in all 9 lighting districts. That's 9 lighting districts combined, $352,000 cash reserve, and that's based on our budget book from this year. Obviously, it goes down for 4 years until we reach the bottom. We've paid off our debt. We do drop down to $82,000, almost $83,000. As we start to climb back up, that's because we've paid off the equipment for NYSEG. We're now only paying for electricity, and you can see in 2021, less than 10 years later, we've actually exceeded the cash surplus that we currently have right now. Which is, you'll see later why I propose that very soon after we've reached back up to that plateau, and I don't know that that's not a bad number to have for a cash reserve. I guess I'd ask a comptroller if that's if that's a good number. We've operated on that number for a while. I think if we get too much more than that, I got a feeling the state comptroller is going to say, much like they did with Beatmantown, how come you're keeping so much money here? We might reach a projection where we lower the tax rate much sooner than I anticipate, based on that.
On those numbers here, on the cash surplus, are we building in the depreciation?
Of the lights?
Yes.
I haven't built in the depreciation only because most of the fixtures last 60-something years, and you're only going to replace, if you replace 2 or 3 fixtures a year, you're going to be way underneath that $25,000 maintenance fee.
Okay,
so it really is kind of in there. Yes.
Okay.
But the question that Tom raised about truck, let's say you're looking at a truck and you're saying the truck's going to last for 10 years.
Right. You need $5,000.
Then you got to be back into, maybe that time now it's going to cost you, $100,000 to get a truck.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but you have a $386,000.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not
exactly.
I'm not
and
worried
that's
about
why I didn't say, because I knew I got back to our number 10 years later, that we had to worry about, well, we have to pay $100,000 for a new bucket truck. We'd have the money, we might just not be, because I'm going to tell you, when you hit year 10, you're going to have to think about reducing the rate farther, because you're going to continue to build up that cash surplus.
Well, you are.
Well, the reason it goes,
why the numbers,
the reason you're going to see it goes down is because on my projection, I've lowered the tax rate after that year. Because we hit that rate, I lowered the tax rate after that.
Okay.
And that's why it went down.
If
you don't lower the tax rate, it'll continue to climb the way it does.
No, there's no need.
Yep. Maintenance plan that we would actually perform, we would visit 12.5% of the streetlights per year. Coincidentally, that's seeing every streetlight every 8 years, which is the life expectancy of a high pressure sodium lamp. So that once we've got through an 8-year cycle, we shouldn't have the routine outages all over the town that we currently have. We should be able to say that every year, and Art's he's done really well about putting together a database of, if he goes and replaces the streetlight here at the corner this year, and next year's the year to replace the lamp, well, he's going to know he just replaced the lamp.
So he's
maybe
replacing it with the same length.
Or he's going to know that that lamp only has a year's life on it. He might replace it with a new lamp so that whole district is good, but he's going to put that lamp aside knowing it's only got a year's worth of use on it, and relamp somewhere else later on, and recycle that lamp so we make sure we get about 8 years worth of use out of it.
That's the current lights, the same ones we have, just
Right.
replacing.
Correct.
Same thing.
Well, only replacing the lamp, because traditionally, that's all, there's only two things gonna happen to these. The photocell is gonna stop working, the lamp's gonna stop working, and occasionally, the ballast is gonna stop working, although that's much smaller percentage of, I mean, most of these, you look at the maintenance that NYSEG has done, very little of it is replacing ballast and whatever. What goes is the lamp and the photocell.
And this is planned maintenance as opposed to the highway department calling them in and saying, hey, you know, there's a light out in Cliff
Correct.
Haven.
This is taking, you'll see later, this is taking 3 weeks, 2 guys, and taking 12.5% of our street lighting inventory and picking the map and routine, going out there and changing the lamp, cleaning the lens, checking the photocell and ballast. Coincidentally, just cleaning the lens will improve the light by 20%.
But Tom, I think where you're going and you're being inordinately quiet about it.
Well, you'll hear from me later.
Yeah, I knew I would, but I was waiting for you to jump in on that. This really would allow you to go into any particular neighborhood or a street and have the option of bringing a light in that's more energy efficient. And it throws Paul's numbers off again because he's not basing cost of operation, the cost of the energy, on anything that we, just like we did at the town hall.
And the only
Come up
thing,
with, you know, more efficient lights.
the only thing I'll tell you with that, Bernie, at least right now, and I really looked at that, the cost of electricity, $23,000 a year over 1,200 and something streetlights.
It's not much.
Technology hasn't got to the point that it would pay us to change out to energy efficient. It just hasn't got there yet. The cost of that fixture would be, I don't know if in my kid's lifetime we'd recoup the money we spent on that
What,
fixture.
would we be buying the same fixture?
It's because the cost.
If we replaced it, yeah, because to keep a neighborhood looking the same, I would promote.
But
I would
see,
promote
that doesn't
no,
help with night.
I wouldn't promote that we change the fixture. I would promote that we change the ballast assembly and what have you in it. The arm, the fixture, all of that would stay. We just change out the inner working guts of it.
But what you're concerned about, Tom, still becomes an option in certain residential areas where
It doesn't, not under this plan.
Yeah, it absolutely does, because the money's there and we control what we put up.
Right.
You know, you could have a request and use my neighborhood to go with a different kind of lighting that doesn't disperse as broadly, and we would say, okay, we can put back this, or at this other rate, something different.
At my neighborhood, I need a 60-foot tree. I only got a 40-foot tree. I keep growing them, but they're not high enough to block those lights yet.
Well,
And the light comes out all over the place. And I am totally against that, and you know that's going to be a big problem for me when this comes up.
Right, but there are also people that when they get up at 6 in the morning with their snowblower, they want that street light showing as far and wide as it can in their driveway. So, but it still enables that conversation to happen because we control it. We can make the decision. You don't have to go to NYSEG.
And I can tell you, last February driving in a plow truck, when it snows 2 feet, those guys will tell you the way to find the road is to drive underneath the streetlights because it's under those.
Yeah.
And so they line themselves up with their own streetlights, and that's how they plow, and then they work their way out to find the edges.
They now have a, and I haven't seen them on anything up here, but they have a hood
Yep.
that you can put over those existing lights. And what that does is it keeps the light from going up, and it actually, you know, focuses that light down.
On the road,
Yeah,
not 100, 200 feet
Correct.
from the road.
It's spotty.
but Tom,
Well,
you
if
also
you go
got
to
to
Trucker
realize,
Lake, you'll see that.
you got, one of the things that
Maybe
was
not.
sold, one of the things that was sold, and one of the reasons people want streetlights. I mean, you'll have people, some people don't want a light in front of their house, other people want a light in front of their house. And that's because they completely buy into the fact that that light gives them some security, that they're not gonna have burglars, and they're not gonna have mischief makers who are gonna be.
And you wanna
in their house.
understand,
And that's
with
totally
this
wrong according to statistics.
with this process, we actually have the ability to say, I don't know, maybe you have a 400-watt lamp in front of your house. We have the ability to go change the ballast, and make it a 100-watt lamp. It's certainly going to be a lot less protruding onto anybody's property then. We have that ability now. You want to remember, NYSEG put up probably bigger wattage fixtures sometimes than it may need, because what do they sell? They sell energy. 400 watt lamp versus 100 watt lamp. That's a pretty easy decision for them to make. Cost for lamps, again, to change out 12.5% of the street lighting would be about $2,000 a year. Preventive maintenance would mean fewer outages and obviously fewer service calls. Time to complete that work would take 2 men, 3 weeks per year. And this is, I went to Art Bro and said, Art, I needed to change out this number of light fixtures. How long, change out the lamps and those, clean the lens, do all that maintenance work, how long would it take? And that's his estimate. Notes of interest. I don't know why there we go. Only 8.5% of the property in the town of Plattsburgh is not currently in a lighting district. It's actually, when you look at the
And
map.
probably 0% currently don't drive through a lighting district.
Yeah.
Everybody's getting the benefit.
$103 million in property is not currently in a lighting district, but should be. Either because they have streetlights down their road, they were eliminated, or they were never put in the lighting district and should have been. There's a couple of roads that Art and I looked at the map and he said, well, they should be in a lighting district. There's lights all the way down that road. For whatever reason they weren't. $103 million worth of property. Coincidentally, $6 million in property is owned by NYSEG that is not in the street lighting district. Projected total assessments. In 2013, this is Brian's estimate, total assessed value of town of Plattsburgh is going to be $1.4 billion. In projecting a tax rate, and again projecting the revenue for this, I projected $15 million in growth each year. You'll see that in the last 10 years, the town of Plattsburgh has grown at a rate of $34 million per year. So $15 million is a pretty low estimate on the revenue side of this. Projected tax rate. This is the $1 million number for everybody. In 2012, we remember that it was 23.96 right now. In January 1, I would promote that the tax rate should drop to 11 cents per thousand. For every single person that's currently in a street lighting district, the lowest street lighting district right now is 19 and change per thousand. And Tom, I think it's actually over in Cliff Haven that's the rate. The highest rate is 29 and change per thousand. So for everybody, they'd see a market reduce in their tax bill for this. For the properties for the 8.5% that I talked about in the last slide, they're going to see a tax bill that they've never seen before.
And this will sustain purchase of all these.
This will pay for the project. This will put back the cash surplus in 10 years. They talked about, and that's why when you see the cash surplus dropped, Marty, because we went from 11 cents to 8 cents, and then down to 7.5. Because again, it kept growing on me, and I had to keep saying, well, if that's the cap, if that's the number we really want, and again, that's going to be for a town board to decide out in 2021. Do you have enough money or not, and do we want to drop the tax rate or not? I'd be hard pressed to think you could sit here and say, well, we're going to keep stockpiling money in there. So again, but that's saying, the number we have is where I tried to balance. And again, when you're dealing with millions of dollars in 1 cent per thousand or quarter of a cent per thousand, it raises it up and down quite a bit. So that's where I came up with the number.
Inflation rate's going to be.
Right. My last slide. We all share the benefit, which is what I argue all the time. People drive through Route 3. They drive through all the busy intersections. They drive through where the 105 streetlights that the general fund pays for. We should all share the cost. That's what I got for you.
That's very well done.
It really is.
Yeah, an excellent job, Paul. That's really great.
I would suggest that I wanted to time you, Paul, and I didn't. I'm going to guess 15 minutes maybe. I think we should have that at a tape session so it's on cable. A lot of people watch that.
Right.
And then see if we can get that launched on our website, because it really does tell the story quite well.
If you were, if we had that open and you were using, the whiteboard, and they could film that.
Yep.
Yep.
So if everyone concurs with that thought, we'll put it on the agenda for Monday.
And you really, we're certainly working towards the purchase with NYSEG, but with budget season right around the corner, that's the number we're going to have to think about, and we're going to have to get to a budgeted number, and that's why I wanted to make sure this was done.
Well, with
ahead
that
of the
budget number, with those figures that you're saying there, we still have the latitude as to what type of fixture we put up and whether we have night lighting or not.
Sure.
Um,
You gotta give the town, you gotta give that process 8 years to work itself out to build a cash reserve back up again, but then, yeah, absolutely, I mean, if the town board says they wanna change some of those out to energy efficient, whatever, you'll have the money.
The cost that I came up with was about between $110,000 a year with what you had up there in terms of what it would cost for us to operate. We're paying 93, you said, now for rental. But you took into account other costs that we've been doing anyway, which is
Yeah, you gotta add the
Pairing
cost of the
ourselves.
electricity and those other costs are, they're costs we're paying now, and they're in addition to the 93.
Right. After 4 years,
They're
once the
included in that.
once the $100,000 is paid off to NYSEG, or the $400,000 paid off to NYSEG, that $100,000 or $93,000 bill that we pay in rental goes away. And that's where we start seeing, that's where we start seeing the cash surplus.
But
building up.
You
it
negotiated
still
interest
costs
rate
us $105,000 to
I
operate.
know I talked to Diane about being, what's that again? I didn't hear you, Tom.
Still costs us $105,000 to operate after that goes away.
Yeah, but you gotta,
Between all the things that we factored in terms of the bucket truck and all the other things that we factored in, it would be $105,000 a year.
yeah, well, and you gotta remember, that's with projecting incredibly high expenses. If we ever spent $105,000 on streetlights, I'd be very surprised. But I wanted to make sure that I budget enough money that this thing doesn't run short 5 years down the road. Again, if we get a 5% increase, first of all, Public Service Commission is never, ever in a million years gonna allow New York State Electric and Gas to increase their rate of night rate of streetlights 5% in any 1 year. But that's what I budgeted. They're never gonna allow that. It hasn't been done. As a matter of fact, that rate is so close to being flatlined in the last 5 or 6 years. It wasn't, I was gonna project that, but it was so close to being a flat line, it wasn't even worth doing the math for.
Next steps are we get the updated count from NYSEG, which should come in anytime. And we compare that with the numbers we have, just to make sure there's not a huge discrepancy. And then we have to review and make the determination to enter into the agreement with NYSEG to purchase at the negotiated price.
Right.
Then we have to set the rate very soon, which has been proposed tonight at 11 cents across the board, all property owners. And we're in operation January 1.
So we're gonna do a bond for $400,000?
And Gerard, I already know where you're headed, and I'll tell you, I did the math.
Yeah.
If we took everybody who's not currently in a lighting district, that in my opinion shouldn't be, you gotta remember, there's $103,000 worth of property that isn't in a lighting district, that I looked at the map and I went through and searched properties.
3 million.
And they should be in. If you take that out of there, we would wind up raising the rate to 13 cents per thousand for the people that are in the district, and be able to charge 5 cents per thousand for the people that aren't in the district. That would be the difference.
Right. And I still think that it's a difference that the board should consider, because for years we did just that with water and sewer districts. We did just that. You could create a water district, but until you had the water tap outside your home, you paid the general tax and you paid the improved tax once you had the water outside your home. Whether you hooked up to it or not, you didn't pay that special district tax until the water was outside your home.
I would agree to that, but I can tell you, most other towns, Skyler Falls taxes the entire town. Skyler Falls doesn't have near the street.
Well, the other thing that's different with what Gerard's saying, and I really leaned that way for a while, I don't anymore. If I don't have any street, and I've often been the one to say, but you travel, and you get to use them as you go to work, go to shop, whatever. But the argument that I didn't pay it until I had access to the service, I don't think anybody has a lack of access. There's a telephone pole, we just haven't put it up yet.
But you're going to have a select group in the town of Plattsburgh that's never going to want lights. yet you're going to charge them ad infinitum, 5 cents per thousand.
I guarantee they don't
To
all live in the
use,
same
to
place,
use those,
so.
to use those, I'm gonna argue for my
They'll
point.
have to move
You're
to
gonna
one later.
charge them the 5 cents per thousand for utilization of lights throughout the town of Plattsburgh, and they'll never see a light on their street. Once they're in an improved district, once they've got them, they'll go up to the 13 cents a thousand until the rate comes down. I think it makes the most sense, you know, you're not gonna throw the baby, I'm not gonna throw the baby out with the bathwater in this deal, but I really think that this board should consider 2 separate rates. And consider the people who have lakefront property, who enjoy the view like Tom does, don't want it spoiled by lighting, and they're never going to want it. They're gonna still pay, but they're not gonna pay at the highest rate.
And the difference will be $6 per 100,000 to create a tiered system.
Understandable,
I know.
but I think it's worth
Well,
considering.
the only problem, I think, just in general, the more complex you make something, I think it's a problem.
Mhm.
And you get a tiered system, some people say I should be in this tier and that tier. I think, I agree with one rate.
When you come to the building, how much more work is that gonna be?
I would,
It goes on a tax bill.
yeah, I would defer to the billing as far as it's gone
It
out.
goes on a tax bill.
When I was 10 years not in a water district, or in a water district, but not having the improved, you know, the tap outside my house, nobody had a problem billing me the correct amount of taps. And then once it was out there, there was no problem with billing me that correct
Yeah,
amount again.
the only thing to do your scenario is, the town board is gonna have to sit down here with a map, because I can tell you, there's a number of properties that are half in, half out, they should be in, they shouldn't be out, and the town board is gonna have to look at every single piece of property and say, this one's in, this one's out, and you're gonna, to do it, you're gonna have to do that. I've sat down and done that, and that's where it's $103 million worth of property, should be in it right now.
Right.
Why it is, I don't know, or why it isn't, I don't know,
Some of that
but you would have to go
has-
parcel by parcel and do that.
Some of those parcels have lights and they just didn't get in, they've been getting a freebie through the general fund.
Absolutely.
Some of them are parcels of the way it was designed before they were in a district, part of their property, and part of their property wasn't. Yeah, kind of like the part that was on the
Right.
main road, if it
Right.
was a deep.
I'll tell you a perfect example, $1.4 million worth of property, Cumberland Head, the Champlain Ferry landing. There's a street light at the end of Thomas Commodore Highway. The only reason that street light's there is for cars that exiting the ferry. Should they be in the street lighting district?
Yeah, they should pay.
That should be in the crossroads.
Hmm?
That should be in the crossroads.
That's who pays for it now.
Right,
Which is general fund.
which is
General fund.
everybody paying.
General fund.
But what
Again-
I'm saying
again, it
is,
goes
should the
back to-
property, should the ferry property in the lighting district? Because
Yeah.
that's the only people that benefit
Of
from that
course,
light.
no, absolutely, yeah, and that's a problem. You know, sometimes if you have a simple solution that's very efficient, you know, it's sort of like the A plan and the B plan, you always want a plan that's easiest to
Right.
execute. It may not be a perfect plan, but it's easy to execute, and there's a lot to be said for easy execution. That's why I think the whole town should be in one rate.
Needless to say, though, I think we need to have some further discussion, and we got a little bit of time left to have it, to make you comfortable as well, because the one piece of property we didn't talk about is that one that may be on Rand Hill, where that person's 4 acres are nowhere near a streetlight.
Why do we care if Jerry's comfortable? My question.
We're bipartisan.
I would have no problem arguing that the person who owns 4 acres of land that has street lighting on 100 feet of it, that entire property is benefited by the lighting district, and that entire property is taxed at the improved rate. Again, taking your example, if somebody has that same 4 acres and they're nowhere near a street light,
That one's a little bit arguable, but the others and the gerrymandering and just gets
Right.
crazy. I need to call an executive session tonight.
Just one,
I know it's
one
getting
other
late.
point, first page in the minutes need to be.
That was changed.
Okay,
I passed out a copy, you should have got one in the other room.
okay.
Yeah.
It was okay on the computer, it was an error in the printer, just shifted everything over space.
Okay, so we need the executive
So
session.
I need a motion to go into an executive session to discuss the proposed acquisition, sale, lease of real
I
property.
would move that we go into executive session.
Is there a second?
To do that and to discuss the work history of a particular individual.
I'll second.
seconded by Gerard. Any other discussion? We're gonna break, I'm gonna use my Mickey as closest at 9:47.
Yeah.